Hey everyone, this is Living for the Weeknight, and on today's episode, I am recording with Claire. So, Claire's someone who I met during my travels maybe a year ago in Porto, and yeah, after a bit of talking, I figured out she's a pretty cool person who would fit the podcast pretty well. So, she works for the largest touring festival in Australia. Is it the largest? I think it's one of the largest, or the largest, called Groovin the Moo. So, all my Aussies here have probably heard of it. And at the same time, she's pursuing law. So I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Claire was really great to interview, really good to talk to. And also, if you notice that for all the people who are watching on video, if I'm like looking down and it looks like I'm looking just at the ground, that's, me recording quite early, didn't really understand my camera setup. So it just kind of looks like I'm constantly, looking at the ground, but I'm actually looking at my screen so I could see Claire's face while we're doing the call. Also, you might notice my hair color is probably a different color there in the episode. Probably wearing a different t-shirt because I am recording this intro quite some time after I actually recorded the episode. But yeah, enjoy. So today I have Claire with me on the podcast, and Claire is someone. Where did I meet you, Claire? Also, hi Claire, how are you doing? I did tell Claire before I started that's how we're going to start, and I completely forgot. Sorry, guys. It's the morning here for me, evening for Claire. So, Claire, let's just forget how we met. Who are you, Claire?
Oh my God, what a question. Who am I? I'm just a 21-year-old living in Melbourne, loving music, live, love, breathe, work in music. And yeah, I'm also studying law at uni, working at a music and entertainment law firm, and doing some curation for festivals on the side as well. Yeah, that's basically me in a couple of words.
That's awesome. That's a lot of stuff there. I also thank your university for the free Zoom link so I can record this. Given I'm a great
Yeah,
I'm a great podcast host and I'm still figuring out how to record stuff properly. But no, that's really cool. So so you've been studying law for like what, 3 years now, something like that?
Yeah, I'm in my last semester of my third year, and if all things if all things go right, I have like another year and a half.
Yeah.
But yeah, with these things, it's like you never know where it takes you. So
Yeah.
I'll just take it as it is.
Take it for the ride. And
Totally.
what with specifically with regards to law, is it any specific type of law or something you're aiming for with regards to that?
Yeah, well, I think what I've been currently doing is mainly like in the music and entertainment space. When I was, doing a lot of stuff for festivals, that was kind of like my first sort of introduction to like heavy contract work. And that was like mainly just like negotiating stuff for like artists to come along to our festivals. I was also working at like a record label after I finished high school. And yeah, that was like also kind of like a brief little taste of what that sort of legal work looked like in our line of work. And now obviously working at a music and entertainment law firm, it's very sort of in that industry, in that area of law, a lot of intellectual property, a lot of licensing, all sorts.
Nice.
So yeah,
yes.
Still pretty open to what life throws at me.
Nice. So like intertwined with your world of music as well there. And so like you mentioned before as well, you're doing music programming. There's a lot of music in your life, clearly. What came first, law or the music, or music and the law? I don't know. That sounds like some sort of 50s love song.
Chicken or the egg? Music definitely came first. I was, I've been volunteering in music since I was like 15 years old, and that was really just like with a local group of like young people based in Melbourne through like a freezer committee. And like freezer really is just like this local committee that's comprised of young people under the age of 25 putting on all ages shows for young people with young people, and really just like highlighting all of the local artists, local bands that were emerging out of local areas across Melbourne. I was like in that space for a long time. And obviously that's all sort of within that live music circle. And then slowly, like after I graduated from high school, I was really fortunate enough to take part in like a record label, doing some label management stuff. Was there for 6 months, managing some artists, really understanding the like all corners of the running of a record label. And I think it was really from that point that I was able to expand my network within the music industry in Australia and understand the different sorts of jobs that there are like within music, and also the different kinds of roles like within an artist's career development. And I just got to meet so many awesome, incredible, inspiring people that I was just like, far out, I think I want to actually make this a full-on career. And then, working at the record label, I also realized that there were a lot of contracts that I didn't understand from like a management perspective. And, that was really important for our emerging artists, and for them also to understand their rights in relation to other collaborators that they were working with. So I think there I kind of started understanding like, like there's also like a legal pathway that comes along with this job. And we had an awesome like in-house lawyer at the time, and she was doing all of our contracts for our artists. And shout out Moira. You are the woman that inspired me to go to law school and
That's awesome.
pursue that path.
Yeah, it's no, I like that. I like that. And you previously mentioned, on the side you do music programming as well. Could you like explain for the audience what exactly is music programming, and from like all the other kind of things you've been doing within music, how did you get into that? Because one of the reasons I wanted to interview as well is I remember when you told me about what you do with regards to music programming. It sounds so awesome. I've never met anyone who does music programming. And I originally thought that was like your full-time job. And then you're like, now I study as well. And I'm like, well, how? Where's all this time? But sorry, that's a lot of things. Go ahead. What is music programming and how did you get there?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, just to kind of like segue out a little bit, but like I remember having that conversation with you as well, like in Portugal. And it was just like, it was such a fun time sort of speaking to you as well, because it was like, it actually really makes me think about what I enjoy about my role and kind of like understanding how to articulate that. I'd explain music programming as really just like a band booker, someone who curates the lineup for a festival or a show or an event, and is just really has their ear to the ground, understanding all of the amazing music that is coming out from local artists or international artists, and having a good grasp of how to put on a show and curate the flow so that all of the artists and the sounds all work together really well and curate a soundscape that is enjoyable for everyone and sort of accompanies the experience of also going to a festival. My job is really just curating the local lineup for one of our big major festivals here in Australia, Groovin the Moo Festival. I do the local music programming, so that really is just like all of the local Australian artists that perform at each of our local shows across our 6 cities. And that process entails, just understanding a lot of the emerging talent that is coming out of all of the different regions, staying in close contact with a lot of senior agents and managers to understand the artists that they're working with and being really familiar with their roster as well, and working closely with like community radio, not so much mainstream radio as because they don't really showcase a lot of local Aussie artists, unfortunately, but we're trying to change that. Community radio is a super big driver in pushing out local artists. So just like maintaining connections with all of those facets of the industry, and then using everyone's creative tastes to establish a lineup that people would really want to enjoy going to.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And I have so many questions from that already, to be honest.
Mm,
I guess it's my first question would be is, given it's a touring festival,
mm.
you're trying to really help local Aussie artists as well. Do you find the style of lineup can be very different city to city, and does that vary not only on the local artists you have access to, but also like the, I don't know, music tastes and in that surrounding city that you're going to be touring in?
Totally, totally. Yeah, I'm so happy that you asked that question, because yeah, I feel like that is so relevant to the festival scene, especially in that touring context. So yeah, so we go to 6 different cities, and like in Australia, like we really only have, I guess, 3 major cities, that being Sydney, Melbourne, and kind of Brisbane, which is debatable sometimes. And then, other 3 cities, Perth, Canberra, and Adelaide. And I guess those are, I guess, our smaller cities, but, I still like love those shows. Those shows are probably some of my favorites. But yeah, I think each city has like a distinct, local scene when it comes to music. And I think one thing that is really unique about a local programmer's job is really understanding what's happening on ground. And so that's why those connections are really important. Having those connections with local promoters, venue bookers, so people who book like the live music venue like of that city, that's like getting all of those like local artists, because they really know like what the people in that city are wanting to see. I know, for example, in Melbourne, like we have a really, really big electronic music scene as compared to all of the other cities. So, like a big part of programming our Melbourne show, for example, is like honing in on that electronic R&B hip hop scene. And then for other cities like Perth, for example, so that's Western Australia, they've been having some insanely incredible indie rock bands coming coming out of Perth. And so, yeah, like a lot of the local programming as a result of that would showcase a lot of that talent and a lot of that music. And yeah, I think because it's so important to respect the local scenes that are happening in each of the scenes, you kind of have to program something that reflects the local scene, rather than just like impose your taste. And, like if you really love grunge music, you can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to, program grunge music for all of the 2024 lineup. Yeah, you really got to cater to the different, scenes that are happening, and work with people collaboratively.
Do you find you need to have, in general, an appreciation for all kinds of music to do programming? Because I was imagining if I did it, I think I'm quite biased with what I like. Like I think like everyone feel free to enjoy the music you enjoy, but I think I'd really struggle to be like, oh, the taste in this place, I don't know, the city is country music. I wouldn't know where to start. And even if I found artists to book, I wouldn't know if they're good and if people are going to like them. So do you find you genuinely need, I don't know, like an appreciation for all kinds of music, or can you like leverage on your colleagues a bit?
That's a really good question. Yeah, definitely leverage on the connections that you have, like, always. But yeah, coming back to your question of like needing to have that appreciation for different kinds of music, I'd say yes, kind of, asterisks. I think you need to be able to understand why music resonates with different people. And, as a result of that, you are then more conscious as to the different, kinds of genres, different types of music out there. Obviously, you're going to have your preferences. I think, that's super natural. Like for me, I really love indie alternative music. But yeah, being able to understand like why, certain sounds like have such a strong and unique following, I think is quite important to excelling in this role. And for me personally, I think one way that I've been able to do that, or like at least improve on it, is by going to shows, like live shows. So yeah, I mean, for example, I wasn't always like a super big like hip hop music listener, especially like when I was in high school. I think I'd exclusively listened to non-hip hop music. I think I listened to every genre of music except for hip hop. But then, yeah, like then after high school and, meeting people from, all areas of the music industry. You obviously do come across hip hop quite a lot, and it's one of our, major genres of music, like within the industry. And then going to a bunch of shows, like going to a bunch of hip hop shows, understanding the culture that surrounds that music scene, you then kind of develop an appreciation for it. So even though you might not have like come about it naturally or intrinsically, it's sort of like as a result of experiencing it in the flesh and seeing how great of a show, it translates into, then you're like, oh yeah, like I can appreciate that. And then it sort of changes your perspective when you're like listening to, for example, hip hop music, because then you kind of like understand how certain parts would translate into a live show, why certain hooks are so catchy, and yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, because music is more than, it's going to sound really, I don't know, pretentious to say, but music is more than just the listening experience. There's so much to it. There's the culture, there's the origin. Music just doesn't stem from nowhere. I mean, some of it does these days, but not to. I was just kind of thinking of AI music, but forget that. That's another.
Yeah. Oh my god.
We'll get onto that later.
Totally. Yeah.
Before I start becoming an old man ranting about, I don't know, shouting at the clouds like I normally do. Yeah, like music, it has a culture, has a place. Like, I think about how often there's music I didn't really understand. Like, before I went to Central and South America, I didn't really understand reggaeton music or salsa music. And you kind of go there and you learn about all the culture behind it, how it stemmed, how a lot of music comes out of defiance as well, or, a big change in like the political spectrum. Like, I think that's how punk rock came about.
Totally.
And it just gives you a newfound appreciation for this. And yeah, it's just cool. It's cool to see. And one other thing I was thinking about in terms of, other genres you may not necessarily be in, I genuinely think there's something within every genre for you. It may not be what's on the mainstream, but there's millions of subgenres within every within every genre. I think you can always find something you'll actually like within each one.
Totally. And I think, nowadays, like what even is a genre? I don't think people are really like abiding by sort of strict genres. People are like experimenting with their sound and like I think it's good if we don't lock people in different boxes and
That's the thing, yeah, like genres, it is genuinely, it's like it's pigeonholing people into, this is your style of music. But quite often, I think we say it just out of convenience when someone's like, "What does this sound like?" And you just kind of want to say, "Oh, it's a bit like this." But in actual fact, like things have changed so much. What is regarded as pop these days is so different to what was pop 20 years ago. Like you might have a pop song which has got like an underlying like 140 BPM techno beat in it, and that wasn't pop like 20 years ago. But I think you're right. I do like how music's changing and people are just challenging it, just making stuff they love, making what they want to do, and not caring of what the genre is. Because I listened to a podcast recently, and one of the artists, he said him and his duo, they split up to pursue their own solo projects. But he said he used to hate how everyone would regard them as a liquid drum and bass act when that's what they made that kind of music as well at the start, but they made so much more. But he would go and play gigs and people just wanted to hear the liquid drum and bass because that's what they thought they were. And he hated that.
Totally. Yeah. And like, sometimes I feel like artists also feel like there's an expectation that they have to meet once they sort of reach a certain level and become established and known for like a certain sound. And then like I totally understand why artists would then feel that pressure of like, oh, like, it's hard for me to then branch out. So yeah, I think definitely like it's a good thing that we're sort of, I guess, moving away from those strictly genre binding attitudes.
Yeah, no, definitely. Another thing I wanted to ask you was, given your festival is touring and you play in so many different cities in Australia, just like tell me, what's the landscape of like of festivals like in the last few years? Has it evolved much? Has it changed? What are like, I don't know, the big challenges at the moment?
Yeah, such a good question and so relevant to Australia as well. So yeah, we've had like a lot of festivals cancel in the past, yeah, like month or so. Like the first quarter has just been absolutely miserable for Aussie music, which is so sad.
Like there was that
Yeah, like
really,
some of
really
us.
big one that cancelled, right? I forget the name, but it was like massive.
Yeah, that's right. So it's Splendor in the Grass, which is, yeah, like Australia's biggest festival, cancelled for 2024. Our festival, Groovin the Moo, has also sadly cancelled for this
Mm.
year as well. And yeah, I think one thing that's really, I think, struck a chord with people is that idea that, you know, is it because festivals are fading out of the Australian music scene, or is it because there are sort of external factors that are all contributing to the reason why festivals aren't able to run as the way that they have been run in the past? And I think it's actually a sort of conglomeration of all of those factors.
Mm.
I think definitely there's an attitude change towards festivals, especially those like long, multi-day camping festivals. And also in some ways like those multi-genre festivals. I know with Splendor and Groove in the Moo, like we've always been super big in our sort of multi-genre festivals. Like you can never really guess the artists on our lineup. You're always in for a treat. So I think because people are sort of less inclined, well, I don't know, this might just be my perspective, but maybe people are less inclined to go to festivals where they really can't anticipate, what to expect on a lineup. And then that's kind of, halting them from wanting to actually attend those festivals. And you can see that because like a lot of those festivals that are, I guess, purely electronic music or purely hip hop or, purely R&B, those festivals are doing spectacular, like they really have a like a vision as to what their lineup wants to achieve. And if it's like an all R&B lineup that they want, and they ace it, then it does amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess there's that sort of attitude change to the sorts of music that people want to consume. And yeah, and then also that sort of economic side of festivals, for the consumer. I can imagine, cost of living crisis, everyone's feeling the pinch, and it's not exactly it's not exactly cheap going to a festival.
Mm.
And especially if you want to support local artists, more niche artists, I think people would be more inclined to go to like an underground rave or just like a local like show over the weekend, just like at the local music venue. So there's that economic side for the consumer, and then obviously the economic side, I'd imagine, for big major touring festivals, that idea of also needing to entice international artists to come down to Australia and stay
Yeah.
for, a week, 2 weeks. That's also, yeah, a really, really tough one for festivals at the moment.
Because location's such a big factor for Australia because the country's very
Mm,
unique in that you're far away from everything. Like the closest thing
mm.
you have is Bali, and that's not even that close. uh, Also known as the Australian resort holiday. But
I'm actually going to Bali in a couple of weeks, so yeah,
yeah,
there you go.
it's close to you, closer than
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah, the only pro of living in Australia.
Bali. But yeah, and I can imagine, like, especially for international artists, it's because whenever I see, like, in music genres I really like, the artists who are coming to Australia or New Zealand, they'll always do both at the same time. And it'll be like a
Mm,
tour for like 2-3 weeks where they've like got a
mm,
lot of shows because I think, economically it has to be worth their while as well. But then
totally.
it's also very hard for, the companies in Australia to book them because there's not only fee as well when they're coming such a long way. It's
Mm,
also expenses. It's also the cost of flights have gone up. It's also their
mm,
crew, their rider, all these other little bits. And then I think for festivals especially, it's not just you're booking the artist and that's that. You got to pay for the sound systems. You got to pay like for staging and all these. There's so many little bits and pieces. And when you're in a cost of living crisis, where people are feeling the pinch, people want to be paid fairly to just to live and pay their rent. And then on top of
mm.
that, you've got all these other compounding issues like food costs, like fuel, flights, transportation. It just kind of accumulates very easily. And I guess
Totally.
then ticket prices have to rise to compensate this. And if you're already in a cost of
Mm,
living crisis, then yeah, it's hard for people.
exactly. Yeah. And yeah, and I think on top of that, it's like if you don't get a lineup that you want, because I think all artists are getting more expensive in terms of performance fees, let alone asking them to come down to Australia for however long. So, you know, you have that cost of living crisis with people going to festivals. And then, you know, if they're even unsure about the lineup because you didn't get, you know, some of the biggest artists right now because they're too expensive, it's like they're even less inclined to want to go to the festival, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think everything impacts one another, and it's just what it is right now.
Yeah, I guess because I think right now, especially if you're saying in these economic circumstances, okay, I'm going to fork out for one festival, you probably a lot of people maybe just want that lineup to be exactly what they want, rather than I think in the past when festivals were a bit cheaper as well, because especially for like a 3-day festival when you're camping and it's a lot and you're spending a lot of time there, I feel like, I don't know, it felt like in the past that sometimes the culture was, you know, there's a few acts I like here, I'm just gonna book the festival to have a good time with my friends and go listen to new music and that. But I think it's changing. I think especially when costs more of an issue in economic uncertain times, and also I guess, do you think with the change of music culture with like, well, raves have always been big, but they've been always been more underground in the past, and it feels like raves are more in the mainstream now. It's a more regular thing to go to.
Totally.
Do you think with that opportunity and competition, as well as like, you know, local shows for your local artists, that maybe people are just going to more of them because it's cheaper and they can go see who they want?
Totally. Yeah. Like I think that's exactly what we're seeing. It's so funny that, you know, you were saying about the whole like rave scene becoming more mainstream. I got a text from a good family friend of mine. I think she's just turned 16, and she just sent me a message the other day. They're like, "Oh, Claire, like, you know, I know you're doing a lot of stuff in like music and like festivals. I was just wondering whether you know like about any raves that like 16-year-olds can go to." I
Wow.
recently just got into that kind of music, and I was like, "Oh,
Well,
so cute."
different times to when I was growing up, because when I was 16, I was just really into like indie punk
Yeah.
or like a bit of metal.
Right?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It could be my circumstances where I grew up, family, being Indian family, because my parents definitely don't rave. But like, I'm not sure I knew what raving was until I went to university. I wasn't into drum and bass or techno before I went to university. So yeah, and I think, I don't know, I think back then as well, it just wasn't it was a cool thing to do, but it wasn't the thing to do when you were, I don't know, 16, like, I'm going to go raving, I want to be in this culture, this looks so cool. But I guess feeling like a boomer now, the most prominent social media when I was that age was probably Facebook, which is, as you
Love
know
that.
now, for boomers. So I guess it could be a social media thing as well. That's it. Kind of like raves do a good job of marketing them, and you see all these
Totally.
videos. One thing we can talk about later is the culture of everyone filming everything these days, which I don't want to sound like an old man again yelling, but
Yeah,
I get
I kind of like hate it, but also kind of love it. I don't know. I have like a love-hate relationship with that one.
it's actually, yeah, we can talk about it, to be fair. It's for me, it's like, look, don't get me wrong, I've got millions of videos on my phone of raves I've been to, moments, but I think recently I've just had a shift. I think going to Berlin as well kind of changed my opinion on stuff, because a lot of places there you have to put a sticker over your camera and you can't take videos.
Ah.
And do you know what? The dance culture is so much better, because it's, I get it if you're paying for a really big artist, like, I don't know, you're going to see Taylor Swift and you want your own personal video of you went to see her. But I feel like I don't know, when I'm listening to a DJ and they're playing really good tunes, everyone's got their phone out to record that and people aren't dancing, and it actually ruins the feeling of what they're playing. Whereas when I go to raves, like a place in London called Fold, shout out to Fold, awesome place, where again there's no cameras, it's better because you hear them play a track and everyone's dancing, everyone's having a good time, no one's got their phone out. And like, I get it, look, we're all gonna have memory loss one day and it's nice to look back on the memories, but sometimes it feels like people are filming to say, I was there, I'm gonna put it on Instagram, I was there, and never look at it again. But it's each to their own. Like, if it makes you happy to film this and have that memory, go ahead. Don't listen to me. But I don't know. But I never. It's only the last year or so I've kind of shifted in terms of these thoughts.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, I totally agree with the idea of like people should be living in their moment, especially when you're like experiencing music. You know, I
Yeah.
think that's kind of like the one thing that I think music lovers all really bond through. It's that shared love for music, and like you probably don't really want to tarnish that by like whipping out your phone and sort of like disengaging and disassociating yourself from like the actual moment that's happening right in front of you. I think the reason, however, why I kind of love when people do post stuff on social media is that it is such a great gateway for emerging artists to become big. And I
100%
think in
agreed,
some
yeah.
ways, I think in some ways, like it's sort of like the only way that a lot of artists are able to get bigger nowadays. But no, like there definitely should be sort of like a middle ground with that. It's like, obviously, like, do not be on your phones the entire time. Like, why would you pay a ticket to go to the show?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, like if you want to take like a couple of pics, a couple of videos, post it on your Instagram, tag a few people, tag the artist. I think that's also super valid and just like a great way of helping that artist out and reaching a broader audience.
It's true. It does genuinely really, it does really help them out. I just kind of want to know what the balance is. Like, I think back in the day before phones, it used to be you had a videographer and they'd record the set, sell CDs outside, that kind of thing. But I get what you mean. Social media has reach, and especially with the way the algorithms work. But are we at some saturation of competitiveness as well, where if everyone's doing it, how many people is it actually incrementally helping? That's my thought sometimes. And I'm sure it definitely does help people blow up. But I think at the same time, the people who are blowing up, they put a lot into their social media, a lot into that kind of stuff, which if they can roll with it and like it, good, go ahead. I personally, when I try and do it for the podcast, the reason I haven't done it is because it just feels like another job. It feels like it's the part of doing the podcast which I like the least, to be honest, which is why I haven't really took off with doing reels and stuff, because my favorite part is what we're doing now. This is what I love about the podcast. But sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm speaking about myself, like I'm being interviewed. But
no, I'd love to hear it.
but I wanted to also ask you, like, I guess with the festival scene, so we're seeing like an emergence now of like DJs and more DJing at festivals itself. In terms of like the financials of that in general, rather than booking a band, is it cheaper to do? Is it easier to do? Like, is that a factor?
I think it still depends on the caliber of artists. Obviously, if you get an artist like Skrillex, that's still probably going to be quite pricey.
Yeah.
But I think if you just compare, like, local emerging artists, for example, booking DJ electronic artists who have like a pretty easy production, then of course that's going to be, I suppose, like easier from a production perspective, setting that up. And then as a result of that, obviously from a cost perspective, it is, I guess, more affordable to book an electronic artist than a band, for example.
Yeah.
But I think, still from like a festival perspective, like those costs won't really be like the deciding factor as to like whether you book a DJ or whether you book a band. I think it's just like purely like a production thing. What it does mean though for like festivals that really focus on electronic music or like hip hop music, is that as a result of like the production, or like the fact that it's easier to set up production wise, there will be costs that are like somewhat alleviated from production. But I think in terms of overall cost, there might, still be a lot of things to factor in, like lighting and, getting their entire entourage down, or, certain things in the rider. I think it's just like a different world, I suppose, when it comes to booking artists from different music scenes.
Speaking of riders, do you have any good stories of like the wildest riders you've seen?
Too many. Oh my God. Yeah, off the top of my head, I remember there was this one band, actually, you can see them here, Teen Jesus and the Gene Teasers. For those who
That's a good
can't,
name.
yeah,
Also,
for those
awesome
who can't,
poster.
yeah, it's one of my fave posters actually. It was like a show that I worked on a couple years ago
Yeah.
in one of our really big outdoors venues here in Melbourne. But yeah, I remember in Teen Jesus and the Gene Teasers rider, they specifically asked for a framed photo of Jack Black from the School of Rock. It was such a weird request. I mean, obviously we did it for them. Like, it was really cute. But yeah, I think that was just like one of the more unique things that I've seen in a rider. And like I guess like the more outrageous ones is just like insane amounts of like alcohol with like even like just gluten-free vegan food from like specific restaurants and
So kind of
yeah,
like I want to have something from this pricey restaurant.
yeah,
Yeah,
lobsters, all that.
lobsters. Interesting, interesting. Do they are there any? I can't speak. Are there ever any illegal requests?
Um,
You can't.
not that I've seen, not that I've
Yeah,
seen, like specifically written in a rider.
yeah.
But yeah, but like I have seen things that happen backstage, which yeah, let's just say I'm not sure if it was okay by the entire team.
I guess it's the music world. We know what happens
Totally,
backstage.
totally.
Definitely seen artists who are off their face as well before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, definitely.
yeah. So yeah, that goes without saying. And I don't know. So like honestly, like your experience with festivals sounds like so cool, and like I really hope that you're on tour again next year or next festival season. I'm assuming you start like what? Does it start like November time, December time? Because correlating with your summer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like most of our festivals happen during the summertime.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Groovin the Moo, we're sort of like an autumn festival. And yeah, I think that works really well for us because there are just so many like little public holidays like during autumn time. And yeah, I think traditionally we've just been that sort of Glastonbury-esque, everyone's sort of trudging through mud kind of festival.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of actually, yeah, like cracking on with like the curation stuff, there are like little festivals here and there that I've been working on. One of them is Listen Out. That's one of our bigger hip hop festivals. Last year we had Ice Spice, Coil Ray, Skrillex, Fortet.
Big
Some
artists.
really hard hitting names. So yeah, and that one is coming up quite soon actually, around August, September.
Nice, nice.
Sorry, October, November. Yep. So yeah, that one's coming up soon. So just doing some little things for them, and yeah.
Nice, nice. Nah, sounds all cool. And another thing I wanted to ask you about was like, it's not music programming is not your full time thing. You're also studying. What's the balance like between that? How have you been finding that?
Yeah, I mean, it was literally assignment season the past 2 weeks. So I was just crunching through all those assignments, all those essays. But usually I'd say like it's actually pretty okay to balance because like I'm listening to music like basically 24/7 and I really have that passion for discovering new artists. And, a lot of my mates, they also work in music, they work in radio or just, other sort of areas within the industry. So yeah, I think just naturally, like even as like a topic of discussion when we meet up, it's like about music, new artists. So I think from like a curation perspective, like it's I guess is easier, from that perspective to stay on top of all of the new music that is coming out, and as a result, the trends that you observe. and then the actual sort of then curating all of the artists that float your boat, that's then kind of like weekly, fortnightly meetings with the team, seeing what, the direction of the festival is heading into, like artists that are on other people's radars. And then just like chatting with promoters, chatting with agents and seeing, what their vibe of the festival is like, and then, how it all fits into like the artist's map of the year.
Yeah. No, fairs. And I guess with that, like, how do you find, like, doing, studying and doing what is basically sounds like a full-time job to me at the same time? Have you found that's been for like your mental health and, I don't know, happiness? Does it complement each other well? Do you feel like if it was just studying, there'd be something missing? I don't know. Tell me your thoughts.
I was actually thinking about this the other day. I think I have just been super duper extra lucky, in the sense that I really love the people that I've come to know in this industry. Like, I really love everyone that I work with at the festivals, and my experience with working with promoters and agents and managers have all just been super, super positive. And even at uni, like, I just love uni. It's just a bunch of 20-year-olds not really knowing what they want to do in life, and just like sort of jointly struggling. But in that struggle, it's like where everyone just like bonds. And I love that. And I've also been, like really lucky in the sense that I've had great lecturers for a lot of my classes. And then sort of with the experience that I have external to uni, I understand where all of these legal concepts, or like how these legal concepts apply, and the importance of, understanding the law and, contracts and, all of that jazz. So I think overall I've had a pretty positive experience, being able to balance the two. And I think, like if I was just studying and in my room, I'd probably hate myself. But it's the fact that, I actively do want to like go to class, attend my classes, chat, like meet new people and, hang out with mates after class. And I think all of those things sort of like help me manage everything and then stay positive. There are definitely moments, of course, where I'm feeling super stressed out and like overwhelmed by like how much work I got to do and exams coming up and, deadlines to meet in festival world. But I think in those instances, I really am able to sort of take a step back, chat to my support network, people, close friends and, mentors that I have like within the music industry. And then oftentimes like they'd be able to really just like calm me down, because, I think a lot of the issues that I think all people come by is not necessarily the fact that, you have too much work, but that idea that you're probably exacerbating everything in your mind. And you think that, like you doubt yourself and you're like, oh, like I'm incapable of doing X, Y, and Z. And when really it's like, if you just take it one goal at a time, and, these are the things that a lot of my mentors have been able to pass on to me, when you just take things one at a time, and understand that, life is just life.
Yeah.
Go by the flow. It really just like allows you to calm down.
But that is a true thing. It's when you have all these issues together when it becomes an issue and they're kind of swirling around in your head, rather than when they're on a piece of paper and you're just kind of going one by one. It makes it feel easier.
Totally. And like,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say like one more thing about festivals. It's like, especially with festivals, like I think it's a given that like you're not going to get your first choice in artists. Like there's that whole entire negotiation process. There are so many different like factors. It's like if festivals can book the first artist that they want for each different slot at the music festival, it'd be like a different game. I don't think any festival is able to do that. And so intrinsic to festivals is the idea of rejection and failure and needing to pick yourself back up. And I think, just being exposed to that from, the day that I started working in festivals, I think that's really made me understand like, of course, like things are going to fail and, set on fire, but that's not the end of the world. You just pick yourself back up and you move on.
Yeah, sounds like just sounds like a good, like, just kind of like a good situation to grow from on a personal level. Because that's what I was about to say. Life is a series of rejections, but that sounds very very pessimistic. I
No,
assure
but
you.
it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's so true though. But also, like, it can be optimistic in the sense
yeah,
that like you're still alive,
ex-
despite failures.
exactly. Like you're gonna have to encounter failure at some point in your life. It's just more what you do with that after.
Totally.
And having, I don't know, a failure or not doing so well in something, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It could just be a precursor for growth. Yeah.
So true. So true.
But I guess with that, one thing I wanted to ask as well was, so I'm not sure how it is in Australia compared to the rest of the world, but music is a very male dominated industry, especially at the seniority, at the senior manager and ownership levels. Is it the same in Australia, and what is it like being in that male dominated industry?
I can definitely say that it's probably the same as overseas. But yeah, I think one really great thing that I've been able to experience is that here at least in Melbourne, like we have such a, I guess, like strong community of women who support each other within the industry. There's an awesome collective called One for One. Oh, sorry, One of One. And it's like a company run by two incredible women. One used to work at Ditto. I think she works at like a new music distribution company now. The name escapes me. And the other one, yeah, I think she's like a artist. She's like an agent for like an artist. Anyway, just like doing incredible things within the music industry. And they're both amazing women. And they've just started up this company that highlights all of the incredible work done by women in the music industry. And they run events that connect, like women who have like, I guess, really established themselves within the industry and like connecting them with other emerging women within music business, even just like female artists. So yeah, like even though like, yes, like the music industry may be dominated by men and, like cis white men, I think there is still like a really great community of people who like are able to support people that don't fit into that like square box. And as a result of that support, it makes our industry more accessible and like supportive of people wanting to grow. Like when you do then sort of encounter people who I guess are more negative or pessimistic as to, your growth, you're then able to realize like, oh, okay, like this is just their mindset as opposed to like this entire community collective that is helping me, make the most of my career.
Yeah, no, that is good. That is, and I feel like we have seen a lot of change recently, like really recently. Like I feel like pandemic is when things started to actually change quite more rapidly. Like again, I'm not sure how it is with every industry, but at the time within drum and bass for a very long time was just very very male, and the amount of events I'd go to, and there would not be a single female on the lineup or a single queer person on the lineup. It would just be straight males, and it feels like pandemic happened and there was more time for a reflection of equality within that. And every event I go to now, it's not just all male anymore. It's changed, but also there's been a lot more things like mentorship programs, programs to get, say, women into drum and bass music itself, and and given the pandemic started in 2020, a long time ago now. It's weird, but since then, I've really started to see within a genre which was very male oriented and dominated, still is to a degree, to be honest. The amount of events I go to now where I've been to some events where there's more females and queer people or non-binary people on the lineup than men, and it's great to see that we've kind of started to reach this change. But again, I'm not sure if it's the same within every genre, but it is a nice thing to see. And progress is progress. Like we're not going to get to the ideal in 1 year, but it's good to see things being done.
Totally, totally. Yeah, like I 100% agree with that. And yeah, there are so many, I think majority of festivals now actually like they want to make sure that they have a diverse lineup, like I think it's boring actually. Like if you see just like the same looking people making the same sounding music, I think it's exciting when you introduce that, extra bit of, like diversity to your lineup, even just like from a soundscape, perspective,
Yeah.
like people from different cultural backgrounds, they're naturally going to interpret music differently. And so they're going to express it differently. And I think that makes the experience of going to a show, going to a festival all the more exciting. Yeah, and I guess just a final note with that one, it's like there are so many like different collectives in Melbourne now. I think like just Australia wide, probably international wide as well.
Yeah.
So many local collectives that are putting on shows that highlight the talent from like non-binary or non-gender conforming, like culturally diverse people, and yeah, like they're doing God's work. Really, just
Yeah.
yeah, highlighting amazing music.
Because that's the thing, it's ironic how it feels like how music can be for a long time so dominated by just one section of the population, when music's always been, it's been more rebellious, it's been against, the norms and the system of how things are, and
Mm.
also an art which is a form of an expression of, feeling and kind of hardship. So it feels weird that there was a long time where almost all of that was kind of just condensed into one section of the population. It doesn't really make sense.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I can't reason that either. Can't find an explanation, but yeah, I'm definitely happy with the direction that music is taking now.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So another thing I
Mm.
wanted to ask you was, if you weren't in music, if you weren't studying, what do you think you'd be doing?
What a question. Wait, so if I weren't like
Actually,
doing music or studying?
actually, sorry. Let's say you were studying still. You were at university, doing
Mm.
doing law still, but you weren't doing music programming or in that music world. And do you think you'd be doing something else instead of that? Or I guess a better question is, rather than this hypothetical situation, is there something else you want to do in the future? Like something you've wanted to explore but haven't got a chance to
Mm.
yet?
Yeah. I think something that, I think more recently that I've come to really enjoy is just like, oh, this is going to sound so bad and so nerdy. This is the first time I think I've actually ever really said this out loud. But it's like, I really enjoy legal research.
Nice. Like if you enjoy it, it's good for you. Like honestly,
Yeah,
you want to do something that you enjoy, and that's a good thing no matter what it is.
totally. Like, I really enjoy studying law because you see how certain events in our society impact, I guess, like the values that we have, and then how that translates into how we interpret the law, how we believe the law should be. I think that's going into like a bit of a philosophical, yeah, philosophical. Oh my God, I don't even know how to say that word. Philosophical, yeah,
Philosophical.
philosophical. There we go. There we go. Philosophical
I just let you struggle for a bit.
take on the law. But yeah, I think, in taking a lot of classes with, incredible lecturers who have, been part of like law reforms and, critiques of the law, it's like you actually, see them making like a real impact into like on society more broadly. So yeah, I suppose that in the future, like I definitely want to, at least for like a little bit, experience, yeah, like sort of that aspect of my legal studies, like whether it be like working in like a generalist law firm and being able to like take matters to court and then really sort of argue the I don't know, like the gray areas of the law, and then seeing how that then advances the law, or yeah, just like doing some associateships in the court. I don't know, just so many different ideas that I haven't fully fleshed out, but sound really great in my head.
Oh, you figure it out with time. That's how it goes.
Mm, mm.
But no, that's awesome. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is a good time to wrap. But it's been really good talking to you. I've enjoyed it today a lot. Glad I met you last year as well. It is mad. I've met you almost a year ago just in that hostel in Portugal.
I know. What an insane time. But I enjoyed that trip so much. And the fact that like we met up again in Porto, like
Yeah.
originally in Lisbon and then in Porto. So it's like I love when that happens when you're traveling, like you just meet people in one city and then you catch up in another and
Yeah. It's awesome, especially when you get on with the people. When it's someone like, "Oh, I remember you," and I will look the other way and make sure you don't see me, which it doesn't happen a lot, only a few times.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, but no, it's been great chatting. Before we wrap, shout out whatever you want to shout out, and when I do an Instagram post, I'll like tag it and all that.
Oh my God, what am I shouting out?
Groovin the Moo.
Shout out. There is this new band from the UK, actually,
Ooh.
that I think a lot of people might know already because their song has been going viral. But shout out Daydreamers. They are fantastic. They sound a bit like the 1975. And yeah, they're the ones to watch.
Nice.
And hopefully they take over the world someday.
Okay, shout out to Daydreamers. We'll also shout out Groovin the Moo, of course.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah, Groovin the Moo. Even though it's not happening this year, but, fingers crossed it'll happen next year. And when it does, I'll be shouting that out every day, all day on my Instagram.
And shout out all the collectives in Australia making a difference.
Yeah. I love how I totally just went like sidetrack, like,
Yeah.
there's this one niche band in the UK that I want to shout out.
Yeah.
Despite of everything we've said in this podcast.
No, it's I like it. But yeah, no, Claire, it's good chatting to you. Good to catch up as well. And yeah, all the best.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me along.
No worries.